So what's the equivalent of going elbows up in Australia or going over the boards? Because Australians are pissed at the Trump regime, and they are showing it in a myriad of ways. You're seeing it in the tourism numbers right now. We're seeing the biggest drop in Australian visitors since COVID to the United States as travelers avoid Trump's America. That from The Guardian. Tourism down about 7% March 2025 compared to what it was in March 2024. But we're also seeing it in the political dynamic in Australia. And we're seeing this really on an international scale in democracies across the world. Any right-leaning candidate or right-wing candidate that kind of mimic the Trump MAGA verbiage of woke mind virus and woke this and eliminating critical social services and deep state type of language, well, they are now not doing well in elections and not doing well in the polling. Australia's no exception right there. The opposition leader, Peter Dutton, was expected to win the election that was or is taking place on May 3rd. But the dynamic there, like the dynamic in Canada, has shifted. We all know the dynamic in Canada. We report a lot about it here on the Midas Touch Network, where in Canada, the Conservative Party led by Pierre Poilievre, they were expected to win the elections months ago, but then a complete reversal happened as Donald Trump attacked his allies. Donald Trump talks about 51st state this with Canada. He wants to annex Canada. He wants to take it over. Donald Trump's also been attacking Australia and attacking Europe, and we're seeing the effects there, right? In Canada, now the Liberal Party, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, is the favorite to win the election on Monday, on April 28th, when the election takes place. Record-setting advance polling numbers in Canada, but over 7.3 million people having voted there already. We'll see what happens on April 28th when the elections take place, but many people expect a Liberal majority there. Similar story in Australia, where there, the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, who's from the Liberal Party in Australia, but it's a little confusing with different party names. The Liberal Party in Australia is more of their conservative-leaning party, but Peter Dutton, as the opposition leader, he was part of a group in Australia that referred to themselves as the Coalition. And the Coalition was the right-leaning, populist kind of group, and Dutton was expected to win. Dutton would talk about woke mind virus and universities being woke this, woke that, had a very similar sound to it as the kind of Trumpian campaign. And as Trump started to attack Australia, the Labour Party, which is currently the party in power in Australia, led by Anthony Albanese, they started surging ahead. So now, look, I'm not like always saying the polls are always right. I'm just giving you the most up-to-date data, and I think our Australian viewers would agree with the most up-to-date data. The expectation now in the Australian election, which is May 3rd, so it's coming up pretty soon. Advance polling is open in Australia as well, with I think 1.3, 1.5 million people, record-setting early voter turnout in Australia as well, the same way there was record-setting early voter turnout in Canada. The expectation right now is that unless barring something unexpected happening, the Labour Party, led by Anthony Albanese, is expected to stay in power, and they're expected to win the elections there. And that dynamic was not expected before at all. So you're accumulating all of this data. I mean, I talked about the tourism issue, right? I mean, just explaining it one more time. Official statistics from U.S. International Trade reveal the number of visitors from Australia in March 2025 was down by 7% compared with March 2024, a reduction in 4,559 people. We expect that number to increase in April and May and going forward as the United States is showing that it's willing to detain tourists and throw people in ICE detention centers for days or weeks, question them, cavity search them, deport them back. If they can't justify why they're trying to visit the United States, horrific things are happening. And of course, people see that Donald Trump is not following due process, sending migrants to concentration camps in El Salvador. So not exactly alluring for people to travel to the United States when that's going on. But you take a look at this article from NPR, which I think says it appropriately. Trump was once seen as an asset to right-wing populists abroad, no more. Like, I bet you Peter Dutton was like, whoa, man, why did this Trump thing is backfiring on me right now. I was expected to win. Here's what this NPR article said. The story's similar in Australia. Voters are headed to the polls on May 3rd. Opposition leader Peter Dutton, a right-wing populist who once described Trump as a big thinker and has called for cutting funding for schools, which he deems have been too woke and have a woke agenda, is challenging Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Dutton's Liberal Party and its National Party partner, known as the Coalition, were ahead in the polls earlier this year, but have since lost ground to Anthony Albanese and the Labour Party right there. Quote, the Coalition initially had the wind at its back. Now they're in survival mode, says Ryan Neelam, director of the Public Opinion and Foreign Policy Program at the Sydney-based Lowry Institute. That slide closely tracks the first months of the second Trump presidency, which has also been accompanied by a sharp drop in Australian trust towards the U.S., according to a new Lowry poll. The numbers of Australians who believe the U.S. can be trusted to act responsibly on the world stage has plunged over the past year from 56% to 36%. Looking at this YouGov poll, Labor hits 18-month high in the 2PP vote as Coalition slumps to historic low in the YouGov poll. Labor leads 53% to 47% over the Coalition in the two-party TPP. The two-party preferred vote up 0.5%. Labor's primary is 33%, up 1%. Coalition is 33%, down 0.5%. Anthony Albanese leaves as the preferred prime minister by 48% over Peter Dutton. A shocking reversal right there. I mean, here is Peter Dutton when he was asked for clarification on his definition of the idea of woke and what he means by education's woke. Shout out to SBS News for putting this one together. Play this clip.
How are you defining woke?
Well, I answered that question yesterday. I think the point that I see that's of interest as well is what we would do in relation to education funding and health funding. We are absolutely committed to health and education funding as the numbers appear in the budget papers. So before the Prime Minister goes off trying to scare people again, and that's what he's doing at the moment because he's trying to pick fights, he's trying to scare people, but he's, maybe good at that. I'll tell you what he's very bad at, that is helping families. Australian families.
Indoctrination was your word.
Yeah.
What topics are indoctrination that's in the curriculum?
Well, we've spoken before, and including yesterday in relation to it. I want young Australians who are going to school to get the best education they can. I don't want them indoctrinated according to the views of the lecturer at university or in relation to the views of the particular teacher. I want our kids to be taught according to community beliefs and standards, and I think that is the expectation of families. Not controversial here in the suburbs. Might be at the ABC, but not controversial here in the suburbs, and that's exactly what we're after.
Last night, a woman asked you about getting the woke agenda out of schools, and you spoke about potentially conditioning funding from schools to change their curriculum or to influence their curriculum. I think influence was the word that you used. Could I ask specifically what lessons or units you're concerned about having a woke agenda?
I want to make sure that our kids, whether they're at primary school or secondary school or indeed young Australians who are at universities, are receiving the education that their parents would expect them to receive. And our position will reflect community standards in relation to what is being taught at our schools and our universities. And you've seen some recent examples in relation to law school and the requirements being made. I think it was Macquarie University at the time. You've seen other academics who are out as part of protests on the streets and teachers similarly. That's being translated into the classroom. That's not something I support. I support young Australians being able to think freely, being able to assess what's before them and not being told and indoctrinated with something that is the agenda of others.
Then you contrast that to Australia's current Prime Minister of the Labour Party, Anthony Albanese. Their Labour parties would be more equivalent to like the Liberal Party in Canada. And the Liberal Party in Australia, if we're making comparisons, although not always direct, would be more like the Conservative Party of Pierre Poilievre. I know it's confusing, but whatever. Here, play this clip.
The unilateral action that the Trump administration has taken today against every nation in the world does not come as a surprise. For Australia, these tariffs are not unexpected, but let me be clear, they are totally unwarranted. President Trump referred to reciprocal tariffs. A reciprocal tariff would be 0, not 10%. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend.
You know, I want to give a shout out also to the former Prime Minister and current ambassador to the United States, former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, also from the Labour Party. He gave this interview a few months ago, maybe a month ago or so, where he was asked on Australian News about the communications with the Trump regime and how they were going. This was before Trump's tariffs on the world, just to give you context of when this interview was. And I just like that it's deliberate. And you know, just thinking about how former Prime Minister Rudd talks versus how American politicians talk, it's like night and day. Here, play this clip.
Ambassador Rudd, welcome to 7:30.
Good to be back on the program, Sarah.
You were meeting with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick in the lead up to the announcement on the tariffs. Was he listening to Australia's arguments?
Well, I think it's really important, Sarah, just to step back a little bit and understand that the America we're dealing with since the 20th of January is a vastly different America from the past, and in fact, significantly different from the period of Trump 1.0, the first Trump administration. This administration is more nationalist on questions of foreign policy, more protectionist on trade policy, and much more transactional in its overall approach to international negotiations. We've seen that very much reflected in the way in which the administration's approached these tariff negotiations as well. These are deep-seated, fundamental changes in this different America, which every one of the 36 countries who negotiated tariff exemptions on steel and aluminium last time round back in 2017 have had to contend with this time round. You're right to say that with Secretary Lutnick, I've had considerable and ongoing discussions right through the end of last week, in fact starting a little earlier than that, and through into the early days of this week. These have been straightforward, hard, direct, and I think the Secretary understands full well Australia's negotiating position, which is we are long-standing free trade partners with the United States. We impose 0 tariffs against any American export. We've never had a trade surplus with America. And on top of that, America has a 2-to-1 surplus against us. Those arguments, at this stage at least, have not prevailed.
And look, I even want to give a shout out to former Australian Prime Minister Turnbull of the Liberal Party. And he's been very outspoken of Donald Trump because he knew Trump when Turnbull was in office. He knew Trump. He saw the way Trump treated Putin and Kim Jong-un. And Turnbull's always been a reliable person in calling out Trumpism. And so I'll give him a shout out. I'll show you what he previously said. Play this clip.
The Trump fascination with Putin is a very creepy one. And it was palpable. I mean, people who have been with Trump and Putin, and indeed people who saw him with Putin at that Helsinki conference will see the same thing. He has a fascination with Putin. He's in awe of Putin, probably admires him, probably wishes he could be as omnipotent in America as Putin is in Russia. But it's very disconcerting when you see the leader of the free world being so interested in tyrants. And of course, it's not just Putin. I mean, look at his bromance with Kim Jong-un. How improbable was that? You know, effectively exchanging what I think he described as love letters.
I think it is alleged to be among the classified things he took with him to Mar-a-Lago to hang on.
So big elections coming up, right? There's April 28th election in Canada. There's the May 3rd election in Australia. And then looking ahead too, you've got an election in Romania. Big democracy elections coming up. And here on the Midas Touch Network, we provide international coverage. So we'll keep you posted every step of the way. Let me know what you think about our international coverage in the comments below. We appreciate you. And let's get to 5 million subscribers.